Good morning. Welcome to Alignment. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton, the Wisconsin State Poet Laureate, and I'm going to be your host on a conversation today. We get together once a month with one line of poetry and invite two guests to share their stories. Alignment, one line of poetry, and this month the line is through the thick sin between impotence and death. So many narratives that could lead up to. So the way this works is we don't have a long poetry conversation. We use this line of poetry to have a broader conversation. And my first guest is someone I've had a chance to work with and be a fan of for many, many years. I'm excited to introduce you to them as well. Please welcome Ms. Tatera to the stage virtually.
Thank you.
Absolutely. How are we?
Yay, I'm excited to do this. I really thought long and hard about it. A little bit about myself. I'm Anna Chabé. I'm Ojibwe, and I'm an enrolled member of the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Ojibwas. I'm a visual artist, activist, lecturer, now curator, and from Wisconsin, staying in Wisconsin. So I'm in Milwaukee.
That emphasis on staying in Wisconsin sounds like a conversation that you had with oneself.
Yes. The land keeps me here.
Tell me more.
Well, I feel very connected to the land because of my indigenous heritage. And we still own our original allotment when my family was put on a reservation. So I feel like the ancestors keep drawing me back to Wisconsin. So here I am in Wisconsin, and I'm okay with it. Over the years,
You know what's
years,
interesting?
one learns to be, okay with how life deals you at hand.
Really true. And it's interesting how that conversation seems to have evolved over the years, where the idea of staying meant somehow this was a failure on one's part to launch and go see the world. Evolving to, oh, you're leaving this city, this community, this state that could use all of your talents and resources, and of course everything in the middle. So I think it may be generational. It also depends on who you're surrounded with, to where the idea of staying is an absolutely of course, or I guess you deal with it. So I mean, it's a process. What was your influence on deciding to go or stay,
Uh,
outside of decided to just stay?
what? Well, I think one of the influences was family for sure. But most of my family has moved away from Wisconsin, and I'm like holding down. I'm the only one practically left in Wisconsin besides my uncle. So I just feel like our tribe needs to be represented. And in Milwaukee, there is not a lot of Indigenous representation in contemporary arts. Um, I know in Madison, I know a few people that are professors that are contemporary artists, but really in Milwaukee, there isn't a strong voice for that. So when I think of staying here, it's an obligation, but it's an obligation to my community that I take in my heart. It does, it's somewhere I want to be, because I'm thinking for the next 7 generations. Like I need to make their path easier.
7 generations, no pressure.
No, not at all. But
No,
like they say, one little pebble, one little wave leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next.
my goodness, what a journey. Tell me a bit about your art.
Oh, my art. Well, I think my art is about being visible and claiming space and indigenizing spaces. Right now, I'm pretty much focused on visibility and resilience, and really like forced resilience. And I deal a lot with Indigenous history. And I also deal with contemporary issues that are going on, like the pipelines that are happening and missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirits, which is something that's very close and dear to me. Not that I have experienced it personally, but as a matriarch, I think it's very important to uplift women.
And where that intersects with the art that you create. also as a creator as well, you have, here's this thing that I make, or this that tickled a creative nerve in me, and then here's an overlay of a social conversation. So I know I've have artists, and I think in every creator, you, depending on the piece where it's inspired from, it can do both. And I know creators who are like, oh, I don't want that burden. I don't want to have to try to figure. I just want to make. I just want to make. I just want to make. So was that a decision, another decision for you, or was it a natural evolution where your work began to have a be representative of more than just your voice?
I think it was a conscious decision that I made, especially when I'm not sure if your audience knows about the Dakota access pipeline that happened, where the government hired private forces to ram through a pipeline on sacred land and on a ceded treaty land. And so all the tribes got together and helped in that protest. And at the same time, what was going on in Wisconsin is we had our own pipeline issue, and that was through my tribal land and actually across my land. And so I felt like we needed more of a presence in Milwaukee. I saw that people were protesting the pipeline here, but as much as they want to be allies, they were kind of taking over the movement away from the Indigenous people. And I felt like, we needed to, I understand allies, but also like our voices need to be heard because it's really affecting our communities. So that's the decision I made, I think like 6 years ago, to really come out and say, I'm an Indigenous contemporary artist and these issues need to be addressed, because I didn't see it anywhere else in my community at this.
And the representation outside of your community, just to keep the conversation in the conversation, because so many can be dominated by so many other isms and issues and failings and celebrations. So to make sure that you're like, hey, no, we still need to talk about this, good people. And here's a piece of art to help you process that. Well, tell me a bit about this line. Where did this line take you?
The line, the thick skin of impotence and death, right? I thought it was more like the deep wrong between powerlessness and existence. That's kind of where I came at it. And it's probably because of what my artwork is about, my activism, and my words are expressed visually. So I feel like when my art takes up spaces and claiming spaces and indigenizing spaces, I'm taking my power back. The projection of power and controlling your narrative is like very important. Being visible, like I am all about visibility. So I was thinking about all that, and unlearning your silence, I think is really important.
Oh, I love that. Unlearning your silence.
Yeah. And
there's our assignment today.
And it's hard. It's been a hard journey for me. Like my grandfather, he was ashamed of being Indigenous. So his father went to an Indian a boarding school. And so what they do in Pennsylvania, they shipped him out that way. The government did. So it was like taking your culture away. And so that's why I'm so much now about claiming this space, because my mom didn't have the chance to do it, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. So I'm very clear when I say I'm an Indigenous artist first, then a contemporary artist, and then myself,
Then myself. Oh, I love that. And across, it spans so many different conversations, but in terms of that idea of the silence. So in some, historically, what you're sharing, there's a silence that was imposed, right? And then there's, as an individual, a silence that feels imposed, or feels imposed, and sometimes it still actually is, but how you connected that to powerlessness, where it's having the voice, but not having the access of being heard, where that your voice can make a change.
Yeah.
And then there's being conditioned that your voice doesn't matter and that powerlessness there. And that, I would say, that is definitely that thick sin. So, and you're impotent. You can't get anything done if you don't feel you can do anything. And death, good grief. That list goes on and on and on. Well,
Yeah.
tell me, what brings you joy in the midst of all of the where is
It's
it?
all this heavy conversation. I
No, I
think
love it.
what really brings me joy is when my art can connect even with one person, or that I turn on education for somebody, because I'm an educator first, and I really enjoy those conversations about not only history, but how can we make a better world forward? And I think we're at such a precipice. We're like at everything. It's just like coming together. And I think all these voices we need. And this is an exciting time for me, especially as an artist. And I just see us. There's a lot of negativity in the world, but I kind of see like, why keep adding into that? Because you can choose to either take in that negative energy and be that person, or you can kind of be a shining beacon and like explode it outward from you.
It's a choice, good people. Shining is a choice. So can you tell the good people what's next for you? Something you'd like for them to know that's coming up or that you are excited to share?
So I am curating a missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two spirits exhibition. I'm a co-curator, and that will be at the Walker Center, the Walker Point Center for the Arts, in December through February. Then it's traveling to Manitowoc to Raw Museum, and that will be up from April to the end of May, I believe. I have work at the Museum of Wisconsin Art. It addresses Indian boarding school. It's called Kill the Indian, Save the Man. It's all about my GG, my great grandfather. And currently, if you're around in Milwaukee at St. Kate's Hotel, they have like spectacular gallery. I'm in a show right now called Visual Sirens.
Most excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to bring you back at the end. We're all going to have a little bit more chit chat, but I'm so glad to share your story. So we're going to chill in our digital green room for a little bit. And I'm going to invite our next guest to make their way to the stage. Please welcome Miss Kathryn Gahl.
Oh my goodness. Where am I? There I am.
There we are. There we are.
There I am. After listening to that, I'm like, why am I here? I mean, I'm just, Val, it's so nice to meet you and to hear about your work. Yeah. So you want to know who I am? Well,
I do. Tell us your whole story.
Oh, that would take a long time. I guess you remember the game hopscotch when you were a kid?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much what my life has been, or you could call it a checkerboard, or probably the right analogy is a chess game. So I started on an 80-acre dairy farm in Manitowoc County. I was the third of 8 children. I then became a professional student. I went to Alverno for a year, was a German major. Then I went to Stevens Point. Then I went to Boston University. Eventually, I got a degree in English. There were no jobs. And so then I ended up at Syracuse University in nursing. From there, I went to From there, I went to Johns Hopkins and worked in surgical intensive care, where basically there were people from the inner city who were there. I wrote for the underground newspaper there, like I was just enraged about what I saw going on in medicine, even way back then, with the inequities. And I also then worked at Church Hospital, which was a true inner city hospital, not that far from Hopkins. Mm-hmm. After 1 year of that, which was like working 10 years in a small community hospital, I was a camp nurse on Camp Cole's Trip, which was on the Potomac. Right. All that while I was writing, but didn't have any encouragement, didn't have any shape or form to what I was doing. And eventually, then I got pregnant in a Girl Scout tent.
I mean, of course.
Why not?
It's a whole different badge. It's a whole different badge.
Really? You can earn a badge for, well, who knew? They still owe me that. Yeah. Then we moved back to Wisconsin. My husband was from the Netherlands. He was actually, when you talk about the Raarval, that you're going to have a show there, I had an ekphrastic show there in 2017 with 22 of his oils, watercolors, and acrylics that I wrote poetry to go with it. He's deceased. He died in the year 2000 at the age of 59. Then what happened? But actually, before he died, he abandoned me. And so I was a single parent for a long time because he went back to the Netherlands to paint. It's a whole different thing when you have social benefits and support for the artists. Like all of you have figured out a way to do this, right?
In the Netherlands, they have support.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the Renaissance model where if you're an artist, whether his brother did stage set design. And so when he did art posters, when he had that work, he got paid for it. When he didn't have that work, then he was supported by the government. He didn't have to worry about food and housing, and children.
Wouldn't that be something to recognize art and creators as an actual profession? Wouldn't it be interesting if we lived in a state, nation, community? We're going to get there. We're going to get there. We keep our voices going.
Yes, and wouldn't it be interesting if mothers and children, families and children had support where you didn't have to race back to work. You didn't have to work 40 hours a week and then come home and work another 40 hours. And your women are so stressed out, which of course ended up being part of my story, which I never expected. So I was in Kohler at that time, and I then was director of women's and children's services at St. Nicholas in Sheboygan. So I was in charge of labor and delivery, nursery, postpartum, and eventually they added pediatrics and women's health. So I was like, and they tell you to breathe, right? Just breathe.
Best you can.
Yeah, just take a breath. Oh, okay, I can do that. Then I met my second and last husband and was with him for 20 years. And, bless him, he said I was put on this earth to write. And that's when I really began writing. And I wrote everything: fiction, nonfiction, poetry, children's short stories. I became a live storyteller. So you may or may not have heard of Story Catchers. It's patterned after The Moth.
Okay.
After Ex Fabulous. So I did a lot of live storytelling because, as my mother would have said, "Oh, you're so dramatic." Now I say, yeah, right.
What has been that relationship with words and stories? Because that's, in hearing this narrative, that's been the theme, but it's been a theme, or at least it's been a something you leaned into.
I did, and I don't know why. The wordplay thing. I mean, I liked being a German major. I was good at languages, and I can get mesmerized by words. When I was in the 4th grade, my father gave me my first diary, and they were the nuns told them that I was essentially gifted and talented. Of course, nobody knew that. Nobody told me. Why am I saying this in a public venue? Dasha, it's all your fault.
Yes.
See what you're bringing out. That's when I started writing, and trying to get the right word to observe it, and then, as I went into live storytelling, to look at the audience and to realize, really, what was that old saying? Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words are the hardest, whatever, that I've known. It's true. Look at what has happened with everything from indigenous people to LGBT to racism to raping the land to road rage. I mean, there's a lot of expletives out there right now. And my deal is,
the visual, yes, like asteroids.
I'm also a dancer, as you can see. So, I mean, that's where it all comes together. My parents were ballroom dancers, and I'm the only one of 8 kids who dances. I'm neurotic about dancing. I am just
really
crazy about dancing.
So ballroom, what's a tip? Because everyone's, thought about taking that one class at, the rec center. So what's a tip for when we set out for ball? What's the tip that you can give
Well,
us?
everyone says I have 2 left feet, but the question is, can you walk? If you can, that's what they start with dance class. First move one foot, then the other. Then you learn to do it with rhythm. Some people have to count in their head. Other people feel it in their bones. Like I've written a book with a woman who her parents were deaf. And I learned a lot from doing that because even though they were quote unquote deaf, you could feel resonance in the marrow of the bones behind here. You can feel it. Think about drumming circles, right? Think about the beat of life. Screenwriters, when they write a screenplay, they're looking at beats, like where does the emotional resonance change? Where does it go quiet? Where does it go loud? Jazz is compression and expansion, right? That's what we're all doing, no matter what we're doing.
Agreed. I use the same when I introduce people with writing, like, well, you've already been doing this, storytelling, you've already been doing this. We are already built for these things, but we get caught up in, is it as good as the next person's? Is it creative enough? No one's ever going to hire me to dance, write, or sing. That doesn't mean that you're not creative. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Where everything in loving these arts have been attached to, this should be how you support yourself. You should be going on tour. You should publish a book. And sometimes it's for the love and enjoyment of it. And your love and enjoyment has still led you to going on tour and publishing a book. So
did you hear how many shoulds you said? That's what we do to ourselves. We should. No, we shouldn't. Just pull back and let the internal critic take a break.
That's the next t-shirt. No, we shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. That's a t-shirt.
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't.
There, you need one more project. Why don't you?
Exactly. Don't get me going, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much.
Well, you're very.
Tell me, where did this line take you?
Instantly, because of my Catholic background, as a recovering Catholic, it took me into the confessional box. It took me into the color black. And I'm not talking the color is in racism. I'm talking the Crayola color, because sin, impotence, and death are all very heavy. It's the darkness, right? But if, we all have shadows in us, right? And the whole thing about writing is to go into the shadow and not be afraid. What is that? I already forgot that quote from Rumi. It's where the darkness is where the light enters you. You just need a crack of light to get in there. And sometimes when you're doing art, no matter your sculpture or your painting or your dancing, you don't know what you're going to do until you begin to do it. And you discover you can become a clearer thinker by writing, because writing is meaning, sense, and clarity. And if you don't begin the process, you'll never get there. So instead, we become a skater. We just stay on the surface like a tweet, which is another thing that came to me, that tween thing. Tween is for chronological age, right? You're between being a little kid and being a teenager. Those are the tweens. But it also is very close to a tweet. So, and of course, then my background as a registered nurse, when I heard the word impotence, flaccid body part, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, and that is clearly a loss of power. But then as a word person, begin to take that apart. And the best part of impotence is potent. And potent is where the power is. Potent is what makes a chemical work or a medicine work. Or, yeah. And then as a dancer, when I saw sin, my mother would always say, don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Well, really? Yes, I'm going to. And sin, if you add a G to it, what do you get?
You're singing.
Exactly. Exactly. So to do wordplay, um, you know, constructs, sometimes the bad thing about taking a line is, as we know, politicians and con men can take a construct, take the text and make it into a con. So it's up to
You better bring church today, Kathryn.
what?
Wow. I said, you better bring some church today. Wow. And what I love about listening to
So
you.
the poets need to take the line and expand it. That's what poets and writers and dancers and artists do.
I was going to say what I'm and listening to you, and because it's across all the genres, the process of putting things together and editing, the invitation to see something at its face and break it down and see other stories within it. So inviting people to be creative, you're inviting them to really imagine other possibilities. So again, on my soapbox of engaging creatives in all of the conversations of the day, because just what happens with wordplay, what we do with colors, what we do with concepts, is it expands all of our conversations. And having an expansion of all of these conversations is what's next for us, just as human beings, just as human beings.
Well, and then throw AI in there, where AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be able to cognitively, logically solve things. But what happens to the emotion?
Oh,
What happens to the feelings? That's what makes us human, is all these feelings that we have inside of us, and we can't find them. We're like so, what electronic media has done is sort of arrested it. Like it turns back into a tweet. Look at what tweeting did recently, right?
I was going to say, actually, even comparing that to AI, where we have become robotized in how we respond, the theater of being alive, as opposed to figuring out how to be alive.
The theater of being alive. There you go. That's another t-shirt.
I guess we have a business now. Do you have things that are coming up or things that you'd like people to know before we bring everybody together?
Well, I've been surprised, actually. I was a nurse for 25 years. I've been writing for 20. My first book came out during the pandemic, The Velocity of Love, from Water's Edge Press. And Dasha and I both recently won an Outstanding Achievement Award from the Wisconsin Library Association for her book and my book. So that's really fun. And I have 3 more books coming out. One in December is with Dancing Girl Press. I forgot to put that in there. Dancing Girl Press is out of Chicago, and they're going to publish Hard Life, Hard Love. And in the spring, I have 2 books coming out. One is from Cornerstone Press, which is the oldest undergraduate press in the United States. It's at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. And I am so thrilled to be working with all these young editorial directors, managing director, art director, all these students at the university. And that book is called Messengers of the Gods, because Martha Graham called dancers messengers of the gods. Yeah. And last but not least, my memoir is coming out in spring. It's called The Yellow Toothbrush, and it will be published by Two Shrews Press, which is a press out of Green Bay and Manhattan, run by 2 dynamic, on fire young women who are devoted to women's issues. So, yeah, this is nuts.
Been a little busy with all of those words.
Yeah. But you know what? There's more words in the dictionary. I looked.
And then you do the combinations.
The combinations. Yes.
Most excellent. So speaking of combos, I'm going to ask Val to join us here. Kathryn, Val, Kathryn.
Hello.
Hello.
So I also like to make a space where, because these invitations are also introductions, if there's a comment or a thought or a question that you had of each other before we have you part.
I think I really liked how you took that phrase and took it apart and reimagined it. I like to see how people problem solve, and being an artist, that's what you're constantly doing, whether maybe for wordsmiths, it's wordplay. And for people like me, it's like visually, like how to break things down and rearrange them. So I thought that was really interesting. A concept I never even thought of. I love that.
Well, I'm looking at just the way that you're dressed, that you are who you are, that you've brought all of your art into this visual space.
Mhm.
And I need to go to West Bend. I need to go to the RAR. I need to see your work, you
Yes,
know. And I will tell you, as you were talking, one of the things that my father did, my father was German, my mother was Irish. We had this 80-acre farm. Every time he plowed, he would come in with arrowheads.
Yeah.
And we didn't really talk about that much. But I always had this sense of generations, like you're talking about 7 generations. But to us, as poor white farmers, we didn't know anything about it, you know, and was that wrong? I don't know that that's wrong is not the right word. It was just absent. It was a mystery to see these. And so we would take them to grade school and we'd show and tell. But honestly, we didn't know what we were showing. And we didn't have any stories to go with it. So your work is vital to continue that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to meet you.
That's nice meeting you too.
Most excellent. And thank you both. And it was actually a perfect end. So this introduction of conversations that we may not be in already, and all brought us together through this line. You were talking about this idea of silence. We're talking about this idea of generations and what our words can do to bring all those things into pieces. So thank you both. I'm going to share this poem where this line comes from. The thick sin between impotence and death. This is what got our conversations with our 2 guests going today. And the line comes from a poem by Michael S. Harper called Dear John, Dear Coltrane. A love supreme, a love supreme, a love supreme, a love supreme. 6 fingers, toes in the marketplace, near your father's church, in Hamlet, North Carolina, witness to this love in this calm fallow of these minds. There is no substitute for pain. Genitals gone or going, seed burned out, you tuck the roots in the earth, turn back and move by river through swamps, singing, a love supreme, a love supreme. What does it all mean? Loss so great each Black woman expects your failure in mute change, the seed gone. You plod up to the electric city, your song now crystal and blues. You pick the horn, and with some will and blow into the freezing night. A love supreme, a love supreme. Dawn comes and you cook up the thick sin between impotence and death. Fuel the tenor sax, cannibal heart, genitals and sweat. You make you clean. A love supreme, a love supreme. Why you so Black? 'Cause I am. Why you so funky? 'Cause I am. Why you so Black? 'Cause I am. Why you so sweet? 'Cause I am. Why you so Black? 'Cause I am. A love supreme, a love supreme. So sick you couldn't play Naima. So flat we ached. For the song you'd concealed with your own blood, your diseased liver gave out its purity. The inflated heart pumps out the tenor kiss, tenor love. A love supreme, a love supreme, a love supreme, a love supreme. Thank you for being here. Next month, we have another line of poetry, 2 more guests, and hopefully you. Have a great month.